Right, hello viewers, and welcome back to the channel. Now, a question for you. Are bigger wheels the future of gravel bikes? So the big wheels in question are these. It's called 750D and a move pioneered by WTB back in 2017. Very much an experiment, a concept to see what if. So why big wheels? Well, the idea is about the outside diameter of the tyres and the wheels. So with a 40mm tyre on a bigger rim, you have the same outside diameter as a 2.4-inch mountain bike tyre on a 29er rim. And we all know how popular mountain bike tyres are on gravel bikes right now. So what are the benefits? Well, the bigger wheels are claimed to offer a smoother, faster ride over rough gravel due to improved rollover, a longer contact patch for potentially better efficiency, and a better option for taller cyclists who struggle with regular sizes available right now. So let's put those claims to the test and go for a ride and see how they perform. So I'm here in the Forest of Dean, riding some of my favourite trails, and we'll see what the big wheels are like. I must admit, so far, it feels very normal. I wasn't really sure what to expect. Would it feel really slow, lethargic and lazy in the handling department? Would it be slow out the corners? Would it ride like a dog? Well, no, it rides like a normal gravel bike, really. Clearly the changes to the geometry to accommodate the big wheels have worked very well. The necessary fork trail chainstay lengthening to fit the big wheels in hasn't led to a negative impact on the handling. And after all, we're not really talking about a massive leap in outside diameter from a 700 to 750. It's a fairly small change. Right, which way? Down here. Oh, lovely day in the forest today. Sun's out, trails are dry and dusty. A glorious day, some gravel grinding. Right, let's geek out on wheel size for just a minute, not too long before you get too bored. It is a really interesting topic and there's loads of history here around wheel size. And it took a long time to arrive at the wheel size we all now take for granted on drop bar bikes. But go back in time, in history, and there were loads of different wheel size standards, I say standards, by different companies and in different countries. And it took a long time to arrive at the wheel size we all now use on drop bar bikes. Wheel size is inherently a compromise between the benefits of a smaller wheel being lighter and stiffer due to shorter spokes, but the big wheel having better rolling speed. But for some reason, 700C stuck one out as the standard on road bikes. But that said, we saw the return of the smaller 650B, an old French touring wheel size standard for gravel and road plus, but it's not really caught on in a way I thought it might when it first came out a few years ago. While I was over in the mountain bike world, they've gone from 26 to 27.5 to 29, and 29 is largely the main standard in mountain biking now, which is the same rim size as a 700C. The 29er denotes the outside diameter, and this is where it gets confusing because the 700 refers to the outside diameter of the rim and the tyre, and it's really important to stress that difference. Now, the key thing when talking about wheel sizes is there are two measurements at play here. There's the outside diameter, which on a road bike is 700C, hence the name, and on a mountain bike it's 29 inches. But the real important measurement is the actual rim itself, the bead seat diameter, or the BSD for short, just about there. And on a 700C wheel, it's actually 622 millimeters. And what 750D proposes is increasing that bead seat diameter from 622 to 660, a 38mm difference. And that's the difference that it actually is. Not much, is it really? But when you add a 40mm tyre onto that bigger rim, you effectively have the same outside diameter as a 29er mountain bike tyre, a 2.4-inch wide tyre. And that's really interesting because we've seen a small trend of fitting mountain bike tyres to gravel bikes. And the issues therein. So does this solve a problem? Is it creating another problem? Well, only time will tell. But that's I don't want to geek out too much, but just give a bit more background story in case you aren't aware of the details of the B-seat diameter and the outside diameter of different wheels and tyres and all the history. I'll put a link to some fascinating articles about the history of wheel size and how we arrived at this standard down below in the description. But now back to the forest and my riding experience of the new wheels.
The bike doesn't feel slow or resistant to going fast at all. Maybe a bit more hesitant when you get on the power, out of the saddle, to roll up the speed. But to use a cliche, when you're up and rolling at high speed, yeah, maintain speed well. And surprisingly smooth as well. They're quite bumpy, and there's lots of rocks in the ground here. And even on a 45 or 50, it can still be quite jarring. A 45 or 50 mil wide tyre, I mean. But something about the big wheels or the carbon frame and fork on the bike is preventing the ride from being harsh. There's definitely a lot of feedback. It's still a stiff, lightweight drop bar bike, but it's not terribly uncomfortable. I'm really surprised actually, really surprised. I wasn't expecting the 40 mil tyres to give a hard ride, because a bigger volume tyre, like a 45 or a 50 plus, gives you more cushioning, so more comfort. And I do like comfort on these bikes, especially on this sort of trail. The dog approves. The steering is definitely a bit slower through turns. Definitely got a bit more stability at high speed, which is no bad thing if you are racing or doing big distance epic ultras. And with these handlebars here, ideal for long distance ultras. An obvious downside to 40 mil tyres compared to wider tyres is slightly higher risk of a puncture. With 45s, 50s and plus, you are minimising the risk of a puncture a bit more. Depends on the terrain that you're riding, of course. Out of saddle, when the climate feels okay. Gearing doesn't feel unduly compromised because of the bigger wheels and the impact on the gearing. Got the Eagle cassette on this bike, which definitely helps. See how it deals with rocks. That's good. Hello. Thank you. My main worry about this is right now we're living through a trend for much wider tyres and mountain bike tyres on gravel bikes. Tyre sizes are going through the roof as people search for more performance or lower puncture risks. So hard for another wheel size to take off against that backdrop of wider and bigger tyres being arguably better. But better is such a tricky topic when it comes to bike components, because it depends on so many factors and variables. The riding you do, the rider you are, what you're using the bike for, racing, adventure. Could argue this wheel size has come along too late to catch on, or maybe when the big mountain bike tyre trend fades away, as I'm sure it will in the future, maybe then 750D might have a chance. But we do have knowledge of 650B, which have very sensible propositions, not catching on either. Right, so a really interesting ride on this bike. Now, immediate impressions are it feels fairly normal. It doesn't feel strange or wacky at all. Clearly the changes to geometry, the fork trail, the wheelbase, the chainstay length have meant the handling feels fairly normal. But that said, the steering is definitely slower than a typical gravel bike, but no bad thing. You want high speed stability, a bit slower through the corners, not as nimble or agile through the corners perhaps. And one thing that really surprised me is how smooth the bike is. I thought with the narrow tyres compared to the 45 or 50mm tyres I run these days and mountain bike tyres, that the ride would be jarring, harsh and hard, but it's actually pretty smooth. There's still a lot of feedback through the bumps as you expect on a bike like this, no suspension to speak of, but the ride isn't harsh and uncomfortable. So a very interesting experience, and definitely an experience it is.
So it's been a few days since I rode the 750D wheels in the Forest of Dean, and I've had a few days to reflect on that experience and really digest my thoughts and feelings on those big wheels. I've had loads of questions since posting that Instagram video about what the wheels are like, so I want to share a bit more detail about them and where I think this is going and whether it might catch on. But let's tackle the question of whether it will catch on. Well, that's not for me to decide, it's for you to decide with your wallet. And bike companies are often accused of inventing new standards just to sell new products, but they are companies. They have to make money, otherwise they go out of business. I've seen lots of that in the past. But a product can only survive if it actually serves a purpose or solves a problem. I'm not really sure for most people, or people my height anyway, of average proportions, I don't think 750D actually solves an issue and is perhaps a step back in the evolution of tyre size development we've seen on gravel bikes. And riding gravel bikes, they've got better and better as tyres have got wider, and wider is better, but I think there's a limit to how wide you go. And personally for me, going to a mountain bike tyre and putting like massive mountain bike tyres on a gravel bike is perhaps a step too far personally. And at that point, you're probably better off with a mountain bike. But for me, the sweet spot is 45 to 50 on a nice wide rim. And going to 750D with a narrow tyre feels like a step back in that evolution of tyres getting wider and wider. And while I've been impressed with the rolling speed and the comfort of the smaller tyres on big wheels, they are still a smaller tyre. And a smaller tyre means less volume, less air, cushion between you and the ground, so less potential comfort. But I can't see myself rushing out and replacing my bikes and tyres and wheels with this new standard. It doesn't really feel like enough of a benefit to justify buying a new bike, which essentially you have to do, because very few bikes on the market right now will take the bigger wheels and tyres. And some, I'm sure some will, but most likely won't. So for me, that is an issue. But I see this being potentially really useful and exciting for taller cyclists in the same way that a shorter cyclist can choose a smaller wheel size, 650B or C. And it's kind of crazy that you can buy a bike in a number of sizes, 5 to 8 sizes for a frame size, but 1 wheel size. And a very large frame can look kind of odd with 700C wheels. So the bigger wheels could be a benefit for very tall cyclists. If you're riding an XL or XXL or bigger, I think the bigger wheels there could be a benefit. A more proportionally balanced wheel and frame size balance. So that could be a real avenue of potential for the wheel size. So I'm not sold on a new wheel size, but I'm open-minded as ever to this possibly catching on for some people. I think it'll be a niche thing rather than a mainstream thing. But that said, I could be wrong. If a rider wins Unbound or Tracker on the bigger wheels, then that could change everything. And we've seen how influential those top level riders are, especially with mountain bike tyres on gravel bikes right now. All that, and we've not even talked about 32-inch wheels and tyres, but we'll save that for another day. But in the meantime, let me know your thoughts on the bigger wheels by dropping a comment down below. Are you thumbs up or thumbs down? Love to hear from you as always. And a big shout out to James at WTB for allowing me to ride that bike and share my experience with you here on Just Ride Bikes. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below for more content like this on a regular basis. And I'll see you again very soon. Thank you so much for watching.